Talking with Jerry.
Hey, don't forget to like and subscribe. Gotta subscribe. Haven't put out any content in a minute, but I'm back. Had a lot of projects that I've been working on. And I saw something last week that I really wanted to touch on regarding politics. And of course, we have the election coming up next year in 2024. And unfortunately, a lot of the black bloggers, specifically the male bloggers, Ice Cube, and Dr. Omar Johnson. I've talked about Omar Johnson before, nothing disparaging, but I'm going to play some comments by these individuals related to the upcoming election next year and some of the positions that they have taken. As we approach 2024, as I said, several of these podcasters, Ice Cube and Omar Johnson, have really made some outrageous statements. They're real short clips. This is going to be quick, and I'm going to come back with some comments. So let's take a listen to what these individuals had to say and why I think it's very bad and controversial.
Black people have supported Democrats, overwhelmingly for 50, 60 years, and nothing has changed. So something's got to change.
South Africa to do exactly what I want Black America to do. The next presidential election for America is next year. The next presidential election for South Africa is next year.
Yeah.
I would wish all my South African brothers and sisters, just like all my American African brothers and sisters, don't vote for either party. Show them your power. If nobody shows up to vote in the next election, whoever loses will recognize how much they lost out on not catering to the grassroots black vote. And as a result of that, the next election in 2028, they'll be eating out of your hands. The same thing in America. Don't give the Democrat your vote. Show them that you will no longer be taken advantage of. Yeah, you may have to deal with a Republican president for 4 years, but guess what? The Democrats haven't been no walk in the park either. Show the Democrats that if you don't deliver on the things that matter to us, not to the Chinese, not to the immigrants, not to the homosexuals, to black people, show us that we matter and we will return the vote to you. The best way to influence the political process is to not participate in it in one election cycle and let the power structure see your power. But it's not likely to happen. You know why? Because the ANC, the EFF, just like the Republicans and the Democrats and everybody else, they make black people, there's a tendency to make black people feel bad for not participating in the electoral process. They tell you things like, your ancestors died for you to have a right to vote. No, they didn't. Nobody died for you to have the right to vote. They died.
Said it was a great suggestion. He said, don't give the Democrats your vote. I say the same thing. Now, there's two ways you can do that. You could do what Dr. Umar says and say, hey, basically he's saying sit it out. Sit it out for an election cycle and don't give the Democrats your vote. Let them eat cake. Tell them go ask the
Okay, so there you have it. So we have Mr. Ice Cube telling black people that the Democrats for the last 50 years have done nothing for us. Well, Mr. Gangster Rap, Ice Cube, the guy who likes to throw around the N-word, the guy who introduced, along with some other people, gangster rap, which has destroyed our community over the last 30 plus years. And as you know, I have nothing against rap. I was involved in the very early days of rap music as one of the pioneer promoters of it. But Mr. Ice Cube, you're wrong. First of all, the Civil Rights Bill, when African Americans left the Republican Party in mass, having to do with the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement, was 63 years ago. It wasn't 50 years ago. So it shows what he knows. That happened during the election of John F. Kennedy. I've done some podcasts on that before. that's when black people realized that the Republican Party was going in the direction that they are now, which is not caring about black people. That started with Richard Nixon when Dr. King was arrested and almost killed in jail. But it was Kennedy during that election cycle between Kennedy and Nixon that came to the rescue. And black people woke up and saw that it was a Democratic Party that was going to go hard for them. You know, all the economic programs that we have that came about in the 60s and 70s, fair housing created by Democrats. Of course, Social Security created by Democrats, even though there were some issues with Social Security when it started, with African Americans being able to participate in the South. Remember, it's the Democratic Party that's fighting to keep your right to vote alive, while it's the Republican Party all throughout the South making it harder for black people to vote, only black people. Remember, in the last election cycle, and we just had the Supreme Court rule on this, it was Republicans in Alabama who put all of the black area populations in Birmingham, Montgomery, and Selma into one congressional district, and black people lost congressional representation in Congress. Luckily, the Supreme Court just ruled against that, so they'll maybe get that congressional seat back. In Florida, the same thing. Black people lost 2 congressional seats. And also, we have in Louisiana, Republicans did the same thing. So not only are they taking away your vote and making it harder for you to vote, they're taking away your congressional representation. Let's not forget the great Republican hero, Mr. Ronald Reagan, who did nothing for black farmers as they went out of business, who ended all of the social programs, the job training programs like CETA and so forth that were created to help urban America. And of course, we know that Ronald Reagan destroyed those programs. He didn't do anything for them. And he's the hero of the Republican Party. So Ice Cube, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, you're just way off base. Dr. Umar Johnson, you're up to your old antics about, you know, well, black people should just hold back their vote because we don't get anything. I just went over some of the things we have gotten. But, you know, when you make statements like that, don't vote. When someone doesn't vote, the people that are voting for the other party, they actually got 2 votes because you didn't vote. So by not voting, you're handing the election to other people. So Umar, what are you talking about? And I have to say it again. It's historical fact. Black people were killed, murdered, lynched, black towns burnt down, all because black people were exercising their right to vote. That's a fact, Dr. Umar Johnson, and you should know that. You know, the other reason why your statement is so stupid, just stupid, is because, you know, Al Gore, when he was the vice president under Bill Clinton, ran for president against George W. Bush. And he lost because of one state, Florida, and only by 544 votes. And it is believed that because the Supreme Court told him to stop counting the votes, actually Al Gore got more votes. So just one state, and you can see a couple of hundred votes, and that's because Ralph Nader ran as an independent. We got George W. Bush, and because we got him, we got the Iraq War, we got the war in Afghanistan, we went through $2 trillion. Bill Clinton left us with a surplus. We then had the deficit spending that we have today. And I don't think that you could say a lot of positive things that George W. Bush did, all because it got down to one state. And as I said, Florida, 545 more recorded votes, even though there were thousands of black people, tens of thousands that did not vote. We would have never got George W. Bush. So Omar, you should just be quiet. You really don't know what you're talking about. As far as the African Dispora, I mean, you guys got to do your homework. Once again, you're on an Ice Cube rant about what do black people get, and Joe Biden is, you don't know what you're talking about. So let me just give you some facts. Let me just run down some things that maybe you can take a few minutes. Remember, Google is free. But what the Democrats have done over the past 2 years, we have the lowest unemployment rate in the history of unemployment ever being recorded for black people in this country. There are 2 jobs for everybody that wants a job. And I've said this before. I remember being in high school, being laid off from the city when I had a city job, coming out of college, and there weren't jobs. Where now there are more jobs than there are people. Joe Biden has created over 13 million jobs in the past 2 years, and there's millions of jobs out there for people who want them. The contracts that he has put in place in the Build Back Better bill, which is over $1 trillion in infrastructure improvement over the next 10 years, in those federal contracts, it states that minority and specifically black contractors and subcontractors have to be used. And not only the business people to get the contracts so they can make money, but that the employees, the construction workers, many of them have to be first-time construction workers, and they must come from minority groups. That is a fact. Okay, Joe Biden ended the COVID pandemic. We're not running around with masks anymore. Everybody who wanted to get vaccinated got vaccinated. We have the first woman vice president of the history of this country, and she's black. Now you might say, okay, well, her mother was from India, but the father was a black Jamaican, so she's black. And as far as they're concerned, she's black. We have the first black woman on the Supreme Court. That's a fact. We have a record number of black judges who have been appointed to the federal bench for lifetime appointment. We have a black woman who is representing the United States in the United Nations, excuse me. Once again, we have a black woman who represents the United States in the United Nations. The Secretary of Defense, James Austin, he's black. The Secretary of Defense. And under him, we have the Chief of Staff for the Air Force who was just appointed, Mr. Charles Q. Brown. He's black. We also have the Juneteenth holiday, which just was last week. I mean, a national holiday, a federal holiday. We also have a press secretary in the White House who is a black woman. We had the child tax credit, which helped a lot of black single mothers, so they were able to get child care, perhaps go back to school, further their education, help their families out. Remember, we had a water crisis in Jackson, Mississippi, the largest city in Mississippi, predominantly black, where their water system failed. And Joe Biden has come up with $150 million of federal money, more than that, to help now get clean water in Jackson, Mississippi. There's student loan forgiveness, though that may end soon. It's not because of Joe Biden. He put it in place, but it's up to Congress, it's up to the Senate, and they're worried about the Republicans who are going to sue in the Supreme Court, which is ridiculous because some of the Republican attorney generals are saying it's going to impact their state, which is ridiculous. So why you want to talk about what have Democrats done? I gave you just now a litany of items that have helped people in their everyday lives. And to end with some of the things that Republicans are doing to hurt black people, I can say here in the state of Florida, besides making it harder to vote, they went and drummed up BS charges on black people who they arrested and said they committed voter fraud, though it was the state that gave them their voter ID. But whites who deliberately voted twice for Donald Trump knew they were voting illegally. They got a slap on the wrist. They weren't even arrested. They got community service. What a disgrace. And you say support these people? These are the same people who are banning books on black people in school throughout the whole South. It's not just happening in Florida now. They're doing this all throughout the South, in Texas and North Carolina, with their lies about CRT, critical race theory. And you want to support these people? Why our young black children are going to school and they can't even get a book, do a school assignment on someone that was black and prominent and did something positive in their life, be it through military service, a civil rights hero, an athlete, even Barack Obama, the president, books about him being removed from schools, and you're supporting these people? You're freaking crazy. So in closing, what I would like to say is that, there's a choice, a clear choice. Because every time black people get in the position of power, And we're not just talking about post end of the Civil War, where we had Jim Crow, and in instances we know about things like Black Wall Street and towns that were burnt down. They're just doing it differently today. And what do I mean? Republicans in Texas under Harris County, I've talked before how they took over the school system from black people, the black teachers, the superintendents. They've taken over the whole Houston school system. Now this Governor Abbott, this racist Republican, is going to override, because the Texas Senate and Assembly, they passed a law that he signed that they can overrule the voters in Houston in the election and throw out all of their votes. So you're for that? And then we just got through dealing with the budget crisis, trying to get the budget approved, and thank goodness we didn't have a major financial crisis where the debt limit would not have been raised, because what you didn't hear on television being reported was that if we did not pass a debt limit bill, even if we didn't get into a default situation and the government would have shut down and they couldn't send out Social Security checks, that was going to continue for 6 to 9 months. So even if a month later they did a debt bill, your grandmother, your poor relatives who survive off Social Security to eat and pay their rent and survive, they wouldn't have had a Social Security check for 6 to 9 months. How does that sound? How many black people do you know that depend on that because they're not wealthy? But you're saying you don't know what the Democratic Party has done for black people? You're gonna don't vote, sit out the election, we're not getting anything? You're idiots, complete idiots. But it's easy, Ice Cube, when you live in a mansion, and of course, you're worth, several $1 million, and of course you don't want to pay more taxes, so you're slightly saying, don't vote for this person, when we know you really like Donald Trump because you got tax cuts, And Dr. Umar, I'm still waiting for your Frederick Douglass school to be built after 7 to 8, 9 years. And you could have been opened up a charter school or even started a school with 1 grade by now. And then a lot of the black bloggers, you have no solutions, you have nothing, you don't even take any effort to do any research to back up what you're saying. So yes, this is a little bit of a rant that I wanted to go on, because as we enter 2024, it's really upsetting to see specifically some black males make these type of ridiculous statements that they don't know what they're talking about. They don't have any facts. And as I just tore into some people, everything they're saying is just, total garbage as far as what has happened and how black people have benefited over the last 60 plus years from democratic policies that have really helped us create a large black middle class, create black millionaires, multimillionaires, and even black billionaires. So in closing, stay woke and stay informed, and stop listening to some of these BS people. They're a joke.